Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Fundamentalists podcast. Here we go. So,
We're looking at the camera now.
yeah, isn't that fancy? It takes one video, and
Yeah.
we realize that there's a camera involved. This is a podcast, folks, if you're not familiar with it. My name is Elliott Morgan. This is my good friend Peter Rollins. He is a philosopher from Northern Ireland, and I am not. And we talk about all sorts of things on this podcast. If you're new, there's a whole back catalog that you can subscribe to on iTunes. Peter has a Patreon as well, patreon.com/Peter Rollins, where you can watch this sometimes as a live stream, but you definitely post it earlier, all that fun stuff, and you do all sorts of seminars and all sorts of talks and all sorts of brainy stuff. And I sometimes like brainy stuff, but today we are switching it up a little bit because I'm quote-unquote taking the lead on this.
Yep.
So the way it normally works is I say hi, and then you say something really smart, and then I say a bunch of dumb stuff, and then we go back and forth.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to start with the dumb stuff. Or the dumb person, I guess, isn't dumb stuff. So here's what we're going to talk about. A little bit about the idea or the concept of addiction. Okay? And then we're going to talk about hypnosis.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Great.
Yeah,
Get ready. I'm just basically me leading it just means I'm going to put a bunch of stuff on you that you have to kind of think of really quick. So basically, here's the backstory for this. So I'm doing dry January right now, and I love it. I think it's great. It's better. I feel like I spent the holidays just going crazy, and so a lot of folks that I've heard when they're doing dry January are very like, they hate it and they're like, I just can't wait. I can't wait to get a drink or whatever. I have not had that at all, but I know that maybe it'll come. I don't think it really will, but I probably will end up drinking when I travel to, I'm going to on vacation at the end of the month for my girlfriend's and my anniversary. So all that said, I stumbled on this video from the Joe Rogan podcast.
Okay.
Similar to ours, similar podcast. And his guest was Nikki Glaser, who's a comedian, very funny. And the title of the video was the one book Nikki read to stop drinking or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was very curious about that. And so I clicked on the video, and she started talking about this book that I thought was going to be like very heavy and very like academic for some reason, and instead it's literally called How the Easy Way to Control Alcohol. And she was like, I read this book. She was like, the book makes all these claims where it's like, I'm listening to the audiobook. It's like, if you listen to this, at the end of it, you will have no desire to drink. It will be easy and it will be permanent.
Yeah.
And fast, immediate, permanent.
I've seen
easy.
adverts about dieting that's similar to this.
Yes,
yeah,
it's
okay.
very
yeah,
similar.
yeah.
It's like it's too good to be true type claims. So she's explaining how she read
she'll
this
tell
book.
you, the book tells you how to make $10,000 a month
From home.
From home,
Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Pause for coffee and not with no alcohol in it.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, one of my friends was doing dry January last year, and he was telling me about this while drinking a beer. He was saying, I'm in dry January, and I was like, you're drinking a beer? And he's like, beer, it doesn't count as alcohol. Like, that is an Irish dry January for you.
That's the most Irish thing you could possibly do. Yeah,
no irony, by the way, no irony as he was supping a beer. And he's like, that doesn't count.
Yeah, don't be ridiculous.
That's not alcohol.
I'm not a nerd. That would go against what this book is saying for sure. And I'm definitely not like, I'm not doing sober January. I enjoy marijuana and all that fun stuff. So that's a different thing, which we can get into because there's the idea of you quit it and then you supplement it with something and all that. And it's like the dry drunk idea. You stop drinking, but you do a billion other things that are bad for you. So anyway, Nikki Glaser in this video is describing her journey with drinking, and it was like very similar to my own journey with it, where it's sort of like something I did. It became something that like was part of my brand and is part of my brand, and then it became something where it felt a little too much. Like it just felt like waking up tired, looking forward to a drink all the time, kind of suspending having to confront whatever is going on. And then she talked about how when she quit, you know, it sort of caused after reading this book, it caused this sort of pivot in her career, and things just got better, which I've heard that before. A buddy of mine named Michael Buckley is a wonderful human being, has the same kind of idea. You stop drinking, life gets better. Okay. And that's
he's
sort
the
of
guy
the
with the sex problem as well, you told me about.
Yes, he is. Huge sex problem. Sex addict. Absolutely. Out of his mind.
That still hasn't been fixed.
No, absolutely not. So be on the lookout.
I'm praying for him.
He's wanted in a lot of states.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a sweetheart, and he does all these like very inspirational videos. He's a life coach, and he's talking about, you know, all this stuff. And he's kind of a life coach that I enjoy listening to. We won't get into that's a different episode, which is it. There's the bingo. Yeah. So she's talking about how it sort of changes everything, and then she's like, I don't miss it. She's like, I don't miss drinking, and she credits this book. And so I look into this book, and I immediately am just like, let's give this a go and see how it goes. And well, before I did that, I looked up the reviews. Mm-hmm. I've never seen like universally positive reviews on something like that. Like it would be the equivalent of the, you know, make 10 grand a month from home thing, but people being like, this works. Like thousands of people being like, this works. And so I was like, well, this is interesting because it seems to be good.
This podcast is sponsored by the book, by the way.
Yes,
you're getting paid $10,000,
even though the guy's dead.
This. Oh, is he dead?
Yeah, he's very dead
from alcohol addiction.
So, dude.
Oh, no.
Yes,
no.
Listen.
No.
He died. His first book was called The Easy Way to Quit Smoking, and he died of lung cancer for sure, because he'd smoked like 100 cigarettes a day or something, like some kind of insane amount. But
that's his trick, is stop drinking alcohol and just start smoking like
that's
crazy.
Kind of yes. And he talks anyway, so he wrote this book called The Easy Way to Quit Smoking, and that was his big like breakout success. And apparently the story behind it is he would smoke constantly, and then one day he like put the last cigarette out, and he like got up and he was like, okay, I'm done. He's done. And he went into his family, and he was like, I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to explain to people, he's like, how to get out of smoking cigarettes.
So that's the trick. You have to write a book about not smoking.
I think that's part of
drinking.
It for him.
Oh yeah, that's
it
good.
It definitely seemed to be. But so then I'm reading a lot of then I go on Reddit, and I go on like the subreddits, which I didn't know these existed, but there's subreddits for like quit drinking, quit smoking, and all this stuff. And I just search his name, and there's these people talking about his book. And then on there, everyone is like, oh no, this is like a Bible for this quitting smoking. It's a Bible for quitting drinking. And everyone was like, they're like, I read his book and was sober for the longest stretch I've ever been sober, and like that kind of thing, even if they weren't permanently successful. And and so a lot of this stuff, and this is getting into the hypnosis part, a lot of the reviews are like, I think it's some kind of hypnosis. Like I think it's some kind of the way he speaks, or the way he words everything seems to be, the very little I know about hypnosis, it seems to be that kind of structure where it's like, this is going to happen. I'm not going to lie to you. You can trust me. And then, open your mind, give me leeway. And the way he opens the book on drinking is he's essentially disagreeing with a lot of the AA mantra, while crediting the program or the fellowship or something. I don't remember what he calls it, but he credits them with sort of pioneering a lot of the anti-drinking stuff. But he goes immediately into what addiction is, what an alcoholic is, and all this stuff, and he sort of demystifies a lot of those terms rather than sort of putting all this pressure, because he's like, how is it that AA, like if you're like, am I an alcoholic? Which I've gone through phases, we've talked about this before, where I've been like, oh my God, am I an alcoholic? I'm freaking out. And if you go to the AA like quiz, it asks you questions that are like, do you ever have a drink when you're stressed out? Do you ever have a drink before work? Do you ever have a drink? And if you check any of the boxes, then they're like,
those bastards are just doing that because they know everyone will say yes.
Exactly. Yeah. And then if you check any of them, the answer you get is, you may be an alcoholic. And he's like, how is it that if you check any of them, you might. He's like, what's the point of taking the quiz if you just might be? And then they're like, if you are an alcoholic, only you know you're an alcoholic. And if you know you're an alcoholic, by the way, there's no cure for it, and you're going to be one forever, and you can never drink again.
This is, by the way,
you're
what
going to
they
be
do.
miserable. And he's like, no one's going to do that.
Yeah, this is what, like, some religious groups where they go out in the street and go like, do you think of yourself as a moral person? And go, yeah, well, have you ever told a white lie? Yes. And go like, you're damned to hell.
Yeah.
So it's not quite like that, but it's similar.
Would a moral person do that? Would a moral person lie?
You can definitely catch people out. So
Yeah.
he's saying, he doesn't want to do that approach.
Yeah, doesn't like that approach, thinks it's a little extreme, or maybe not extreme, but self-defeating, because you're sort of like, how would anybody want to quit when it's up to them to decide basically if they're an alcoholic, and then the news, if you do decide you're an alcoholic, is horrible. It's like, you can never drink again. You're done, and there's something wrong with you. You have a different chemical makeup than everybody else. You have an addictive personality.
That's a big thing. Like, I have a friend who has done AA, and it really worked for him. But it's difficult because he's been dry for 20 years or more, and there's part of him going like, I think I could have a drink. But there's this big thing that he has in the back of his mind, because he's been told all the time that if you take one drink,
one drop,
you're done. You're
back. You're on the streets.
Yeah, and of course, like, it's always a possibility. So it's like, what do you do with that? So
do you want to roll the dice on that?
But it does lock you into. Not obviously this isn't AA completely, but some people I've seen are locked into this kind of like, I can never, even if you cheer someone and a bit of someone else's beer drips into your drink, you can't take it.
You smell it too much of it. And so I was like, all right, this is interesting. I'll give this a go. And so I download the audiobook, and I blew through the first 3 hours of it in 3 hours. And I just had it. It was like a Sunday afternoon. I had my headphones in, and I was just like, okay. And I also love the idea of hypnosis. I think it's so fascinating. And I also am, I think, of the type of mind that I could be easily hypnotized. Like, I don't think this bad boys that steal trap. Like, I'm very like, you want to mess with it? Yeah, go for it. Have fun. And so what was interesting was after it was like halfway done, I was like, okay. I was like, I see what this guy's doing. And it was very...
And was it nicely written? And were you kind of like, obviously you were pretty...
And he says in the beginning, he's like, I'm not telling you anything new. He's like, this is all common sense. He's like, but... and then the fun thing that he does is he's like, I had already quit before I started reading the book, like a couple days before. But he was like, if you have quit... if you haven't had a drink in over 24 hours, he's like, don't start up again. He's like, but if you haven't... he's like, keep drinking. He's like, don't stop drinking until the end of this book. He's like, read it sober.
Damn, you missed out then.
I know.
Yeah,
I did. I was like, I should have started.
You could have taken months listening to that audio.
A few hours, just a few hours. He's like, no, because he's like, I want you to drink it, and as you're drinking it, I want you to question what you're getting out of it. And he's like, does it really taste good? Are you actually becoming more brave? Do you actually feel less stressed out as a whole? And he kind of goes through all of the benefits, quote unquote, of alcohol, and is essentially like, none of these are all made up. None of these are true. And
I know it is this weird secret that we all keep, where we all know that most alcohol tastes disgusting, but we all pretend to ourselves and each other that it doesn't.
Yeah.
That like one big glass of mango juice is going to be better than most cocktails. But
Yeah.
we're part of this very interesting secret society where we don't admit it.
Yeah, and that's a whole chapter is just like, and then he's like, what do? You add other things to it. He's like, it all tastes bad. All alcohol tastes horrible. He's like, but if you add orange juice or mango juice, or you add, Coke or soda or something, lime, you can cut the taste. It can be pleasant, but it's still just making it tolerable. And he's like, so it doesn't taste good. He's like, it doesn't quench your thirst. It might temporarily because you feel the water in it. He's like, but it dehydrates you in the long. So he just, it's all common sense stuff. But the way he structures it is so convincing that there is a sense of like, no, it's just a psychological thing. You just go, okay, not interested in it. Anyway, what do you got? Thoughts?
Oh, this is great. I am fascinated. Thoughts. Okay, so then I'm going to ask a few more questions first. His main approach is that simply to help you think about why you drink, or to kind of point out that drinking is not really, doesn't give you the benefits that you think it does. Like what's the angle that he's...
So it seems to be, because I haven't finished it yet. I got a couple more hours left on it, and it's basically the case he's making as a whole. He compares it. He calls it the alcohol trap or the drug trap, and he's like, the metaphor he uses is the pitcher plant. Do you know what that is?
No.
It's like a Venus flytrap, same idea as a Venus flytrap, but it is basically this plant that is open at the end, at the top, and it's a cone at the, cones down, but there is a nectar in it that it produces that attracts flies, and the flies become intoxicated by the nectar, but by the shape of it, as they go down the pitcher plant, they eventually become trapped in it and they die. And so he's like, alcohol, he's like, but the fly has no choice. He's like, so you have no reason to feel guilty about drinking or over drinking or being addicted to something. He's like, because you never had a choice. You've been brainwashed to believe that alcohol is difficult to quit and that it alleviates your stress. He's like, both of those things are a lie. It's incredibly easy to quit, and it doesn't alleviate your stress. And so he's like, at what point when you were drinking did you lose control? And his argument is that you never had control. Like the fly in the pitcher plant, the moment you started doing it, you are in a constant, if not slower than some and faster than others, descent into the trap.
Right. So he's not taking this style of, here are some practical techniques, maybe there's a few, but it's more, if you can simply understand how you get trapped in this and how unappealing it is, that awareness is enough to break your desire for alcohol.
And he also makes it, and I think this is interesting, you might have thoughts on this, there is he's very against the idea of willpower. He's like, when you think of it in terms of willpower, it's the idea that you're depriving yourself of something, and that you only are tempted to do something if you think you're getting something out of it. So he's basically like, you're not getting anything out of this. And so the willpower part goes away. It's not like you don't need to be sitting there going, if only I had a drink, because that is caused by the drink. So it's like all you're doing is satiating the desire that's caused by the thing that's satiating the desire.
Yeah, no, that's all good. So yeah, because there is an issue. The more you willpower and the more you try to force something, we've talked about this before, the more you desire the transgression, and you get into this weird back and forth, or you supplement it, so you start drinking Diet Coke like crazy or something like that. So he's kind of going like, chill out, calm down, relax.
Yeah, calm down, relax, and also know that you have to face, it's not solving your problems, which again, this is all basic stuff. But then what's been interesting is, so in this month has been, because I spent the holidays just like, we're having fun, we're doing whatever. Wasn't working out, wasn't really handling things, like just sort of, it's the end of the year, whatever. This month has been so weird because it's the same crap you hear about all the time, but it's like with having a clearer head, now I'm actually having to deal with the stresses that I wasn't dealing with with drinking, and it's been better, but it's also been slightly miserable in that sense, because I'm actually having to deal with this stuff. Like I've had to realize that I actually might be a little depressed, little bit, in a funk, and I truly was in denial about that until I stopped drinking. But I don't think it's because I'm it's not like I'm gonna snap out of it now. It's not like it's like, oh well, now that I'm not drinking, I know how to handle this, and I have no idea. So I'm just sitting here going oh crap, this has just been in the background the entire time. It's just been being muted, and so hopefully that has long-term benefits, but we'll see.
Yeah Very good. Okay.
So it's time for you to stop drinking, people.
So, yeah, absolutely. Well, Nietzsche, funnily enough, he thought the two big intoxicants of Western civilization were alcohol and religion. And they were both ways to avoid...
Opiate of the people.
What's that?
Religion is the opiate of the people.
Yeah, that's Marx. But yeah, it's kind of...
Oh, is that Marx?
Yeah. But,
I don't know.
Yeah. But although, funnily enough, Marx, when he said that, that's fascinating. That's in his introduction to Hegel's philosophy of right, and he says, religion is the opiate of the people. It is the soulless of a soulless condition, the heart of a heartless nation. It is the imaginary flowers and the chains of our oppression. And then he says we must get rid of the imaginary flowers, not so that we see our chains and despair, but so that we can break the chains and pick living flowers.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful thing where he basically
sure.
says, what's that?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But it's fascinating with this idea is that it's like, he says that religion is, in its kind of popular form, it is what we need to take because life is so difficult. So we take it as a painkiller. People took opiate as a painkiller. And he says, totally fine. Of course you're going to do that. He says the only problem is it stops you from seeing the things that enchain you. So if you stop it, you can see the chains, the stresses of your everyday life, and then you can make changes, and then you can pick living flowers. So it's a nice little thing. And Nietzsche's saying something similar to that. And he goes like, alcohol can make you feel good, but it does dull you to making real changes in your life and really embracing existence in all of its difficulty and beauty.
Yeah, I feel like in a small scale experiencing that, because it's also been, I think a part of it is things are great for me on basically every facet right now. Like things are good. But so in the past season, the fall winter time, it's been a sense of just like I got nothing to worry about. So it's like things are okay, things are good. There's been drama, there's been all this crap, there's been some dark stuff, but as a whole, I got a pretty good thing going here compared to me 3 or 4 years ago. And so the idea that there is change still that I wasn't seeing was sort of ridiculous to me and kind of embarrassing to be like, oh, I can't really be sad because I got it pretty good. And I can't stand when people complain, but you can tell that they have it pretty good and they lack that like perspective. But I still was like, oh yeah, no, this is still this. When you clear everything out, there's still crap going on. And I was like, this is what they talk about. This is that philosophy crap.
Yeah, and that's it. Like there's the two types of trauma: the traumas that happen to you and the trauma that is you. And no one gets rid of the second one. Like there's the traumas that occur in life, and there's the trauma that is life.
You can't even get rid of the trauma that is me.
Yeah, I've tried. So there's something about like alcohol or drugs that can help alleviate the suffering a little bit.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's better to.
It's waiting.
Yeah, it's waiting. The return of the repressed.
As an aside, I got really excited this week because I saw that the Jeopardy is doing the Greatest of All Time series right now. Have you seen this? Do you watch Jeopardy?
No, I've heard of it because I know it's a big thing, but I don't know if I've ever even seen it.
So yeah, it's trivia. It's for smart people, and I'm not good at trivia at all, but I got super stoked about the Greatest of All Time because it's like there's this guy named Ken Jennings who growing up, he just did this huge winning streak where he like won like 70 something episodes in a row, and then they brought this other guy on who won the most per game of anybody, and this other guy who did this other thing, and there was a category called philosophy, and I was like, hell yeah, here we go.
Oh.
And I was like, I'm gonna know this stuff. I do a podcast with a philosopher. I'm gonna nail these. I didn't get a single one.
Can you remember any of them?
Yes, I can, and I'm gonna tell you the most embarrassing one. I was it. So what was it? It was so over Christmas. Grace got me socks with Kierkegaard's face on them.
Nice.
And the word Kierkegaard, because she was like, who's your favorite philosopher? I was like, I don't know, Kierkegaard. And then the category, first one on the philosophy thing is like, this philosopher wrote Fear and Trembling under the pseudonym da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, Nietzsche! And then it was like Kierkegaard. And I was like, shit. And I was like, I should have known that. I was wearing that man's socks today.
Yeah.
And so just so you know, yeah, if you're listening and you think this is going to teach you how to do better philosophy trivia, it probably won't. Or maybe it will, and you'll be better at paying attention to the names.
Or just buy socks. Just buy philosopher socks.
Just buy the socks,
That's the lesson here.
Yeah, talk the talk and then walk the walk, but in the socks.
Yeah.
And then, that's the extent of it.
Wow.
Anyway, so, you should check out the Jeopardy thing.
Okay.
You'd probably be really good at it. You would have gotten every one of them.
I don't know, because philosophy is so not about general knowledge. It's all about how to think. So most philosophers aren't really getting general knowledge. But I suppose it's an area that hopefully I would at least know the base, who said what, who wrote what, and that kind of thing. Yeah,
I tried throwing that kind of thing out as a disclaimer when I was watching. I was like, I don't know, philosophy, it's not really about trivia dates and names, it's more just like whatever. And then I was still embarrassed when I didn't know or blanked on Fear and Trembling. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Back to addiction.
Which, by the way, Kierkegaard on all of this, like, he was a bit straight edge, just like Nietzsche. Like, he was worried that we try to avoid the trauma that is life at all costs.
Yeah.
And his primary two are either through kind of a hedonistic kind of approach, or even an ethicist type of approach.
What's ethicist?
Somebody who's kind of tries to be morally upright, do the right thing, and kind of be a good citizen. He sees that as well as sometimes being a way to avoid responsibility for one's own life. Mm-hmm. And funnily enough, for him,
we call that Twitter today.
Twitter. yeah, there you go. And his response was to, weirdly, the religious leap, but into responsibility.
His was the religious leap as in into religion?
Yeah, but for him, kind of, there was like these stages, and the last stage is this stage in which you leap into the unknown.
Yeah, and which is it's sort of like in AA when they're like talking about the higher power thing, and then people in AA, or I think some people are discouraged by AA because of the religious underpinnings of it, but then nowadays it's sort of just like, no, it's a higher power, it's something, it's above, it transcends who you are, which I would equate to being something like the unknown in Kierkegaard's.
Yeah, and Kierkegaard, he's a tough one, because sometimes it's hard to figure out exactly what he means by God. But what's that?
What drag him? Drag him, like lay into him.
Oh yeah. Well,
what do you not like about Kierkegaard?
No, I do really like him. He's he's one of the greatest thinkers of the modern kind of period. And I think he's doing something very similar to Nietzsche. And so I'm a big fan. And he.
I just don't know. Yeah, I don't know what there is about him that is enough controversial enough to really have a hard and fast like negativity toward him.
Yeah. I mean, so the philosopher Heidegger basically took Kierkegaard's work and then secularized it, kind of took all the best out of it, but where you didn't necessarily need to buy into some of the religious language. So, you could sometimes see Heidegger's work as a type of kind of more universal type of Kierkegaard.
Oh, really?
And it's all about being towards death, taking responsibility for your life, not thinking in relation to the crowd.
Yeah.
So Kierkegaard was all about taking responsibility, not thinking like everybody else thinks.
Cool.
So that's the coolest part of Kierkegaard.
What is your experience? Because and this is to pivot a little bit, but the way that this book that I'm listening to functions in terms of being very hypnotic and some like light hypnosis, and he talks about the hypnosis in the beginning where he's like, some have said that this is hypnosis, and he's like, I don't believe that it is. He's like, but I do believe that you already have been hypnotized, you have been brainwashed in your perception of how alcohol and drugs and nicotine works. And he was like, so there is a de-brainwashing that I'm attempting to do. What are your thoughts on that? You got any have you ever done hypnotherapy? I have friends that have straight up done the like past life regression stuff and all that, which I think is really fascinating and more connected to the unconscious than the actual idea of past lives. Yeah. But have you when you were studying, when you were getting your doctorate, did they ever talk about that?
No, but yeah, it was definitely like in the early days, Freud experimented with hypnosis and used it to, he was experimenting with everything. Drugs,
and he stopped, right? He stopped the hypnosis stuff because the changes weren't permanent. Was that the deal, or was it?
Yeah, so he did. You saw changes, and definitely very dramatic changes. But I think there's a couple of reasons. One is the changes often seem to be not permanent, and then also like hypnosis is partly about me, kind of like influencing you. Mm-hmm. So the strong ego of the hypnotist kind of almost kind of colonizes, becomes a superego, becomes this part of you. And a lot of psychoanalysis is aimed at helping you take responsibility for yourself. So the idea is actually that the analyst isn't there to impose their will, even if it's the will that you want them to impose.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to the analyst because things aren't working. The analyst, except in some forms of ego psychology, the role of the analyst is kind of weirdly the opposite. It's to avoid being another kind of imposing voice in your life.
That was my first reaction to this guy. I mean, it's a reader, it's not the guy, but he's got that like very substantial British, like, hello, there's alcohol and he's got a little bit of humor in it, a little bit of like, you know, dry humor anyway. But the first takeaway I had was that it was so bold. I was like, this guy's, what he's saying is just shamelessly bold. Like, I was like, if I don't know of any area in my life that I would have that kind of like authority on. And he's talking about some of the biggest stuff that affects people in the world, in life. And I was like, this is interesting. And I was like, this must be part of it. This must be where he speaks so authoritatively that you can't help but be like, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But it's fine. I mean, it's like, all right, like I don't see any harm in it if it results in good stuff. But it's interesting that Freud started with the hypnosis stuff and then eventually just was like, oh no, what I meant was the total opposite.
Yeah.
What I'm going to land on is completely away from that.
Yeah. But the element that you're talking about that he didn't go away from, which is the element of, Lacan calls it the subject supposed to know, where Freud says that the patient assumes that you're an expert, and actually that's fine. In fact, that's a good thing. That's the reason why they come to you. So you're coming to this book because this person is an expert, and that idea is important. So if this guy's just being confident, that confidence is a good first step. What Freud wanted to move away from is then someone uses that initial confidence to influence you and kind of try to play with your desire.
And probably create their own, play God a little bit type of deal, even if they're not intending to.
Even if they're not intending to. And I don't know if that guy is doing that, but in a way, psychoanalysis is about just analyzing your desire. So instead of trying to change your desire in any way, and it sounds like this guy's doing a similar thing, because you said he's not trying to get you to will you to stop or anything like that. He's pointing out stuff. But for someone like Freud, again, the idea is let's just analyze your desire. So don't think that we're going to get you stopping drinking. In fact, we may not even talk about your drinking, because we're going to talk about your desire in a wider way. I have a friend who's just started psychoanalysis, and he went in because he had a particular addiction that he wanted to work out.
Here in LA?
No, back in the UK. And he's loving it, but he's going like, we hardly ever talk about it. We talk about all these other things, but it's having a positive impact.
And it was for drinking?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So they hardly ever talk about it. They're talking about lots of other things, but it's already improving things. So
interesting.
Yeah.
I've noticed that in my, it's not psychoanalysis, but my everyday therapy, I've picked up on him avoiding labeling terms. Like he wouldn't use narcissistic, codependent, anxiety, depression, all those words. He will never say to me. And I was, because I've said to him, I'm like, this sounds like this. And at one point, this was yesterday morning, I was like, you're describing this. And he just like looked down and he laughed and he goes, maybe. And he like shrugged his shoulders and I was like, I know what you're doing. You're doing therapy on me. But I was like, that makes way more sense, because now we live in a culture right now that's very quick to label things and very quick to be like, I have this, and this. And I think that can help at times, but I also think it can be a little box that they build around themselves.
Box that you can tick. Yeah, because so this book sounds, to be honest, it sounds great, and I don't know it. So this is not me saying anything against it, but there is a thought that when you go to analysis and you maybe go because of a particular issue, but yeah, just talking about things like your relationship with your family, your friends, your work, you start talking about all of this other stuff, and you find out that it's all interconnected. And just coming to know yourself better and coming to know your desire can then I can't have this change in that particular area.
Yeah.
So sometimes you don't even have to directly. Sometimes it's important to directly go like, I want to slow down in my drinking, but sometimes that is just the manifestation of broader symptoms that need to be looked at and talked about.
Let me play a little bit of it. I want you to just hear how soothing it is. And by the way, apologies to folks who my knuckle hit the mic. So, and we've already been trying to figure out how to stop crackling.
I know there's a wee bit of crackle. It's terrible. I mean, we just need to get stands or something. We're not. You're a pro at this as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I've seen your Valley Folk setup. You've got like proper.
Dude, I literally, if I went in there and they were like, if I wanted to record something, I would have no idea how to do it. Joe kind of knows. Steve understands it.
Yeah.
I don't know what to press. They go in there and I feel like they're a pilot and they're just like, they're like testing levels. And I'm like, what? How does this work?
Your level's always a bit high.
It always is, yeah. Not like this. If anybody knows how to stop crackling, please let us know. And apologies for hitting the mic. But yeah, let's listen to this.
If I truly had an addictive personality, I'd have soon become addicted to everything that was going. Cannabis, heroin, cocaine, the lot. So would you if you genuinely had an addictive personality. The only people I have ever met who claim to have an addictive personality also happen to be addicted to a drug.
That's very interesting.
Isn't that good?
Because here's the thing, I was thinking about this morning when we were saying about addiction. But first of all, the accent, that's brilliant.
It's perfect.
Yeah, it's perfect.
It's all
Sit
you
by
need.
the fire with your slippers.
Yes. I don't know what the cure is for Americans being addicted to alcohol, but I know it involves a British accent in some way, or an Irish accent would probably do it too.
Because but so when you said about this, and I was thinking about it, and I wasn't sure what the book was going to be about, but I was thinking, well, one thing is that are human beings really addictive creatures? People talk about addiction, and of course we can have addictions of sorts, but when it comes to alcohol, for example, it's not just that you're addicted to alcohol, because then you would just drink what they drank in 1984 in the George Orwell's book, which is just very cheap vodka that just, like potsheen they call it in Ireland, just basically alcohol. And there are some people, very few, who will just drink anything with alcohol in it. But most of us, we drink a particular drink. It's a scotch, or it's a whiskey, or it's a gin, or it's a vodka with a particular name. It's a particular brand. James Bond's a good example. He's a bit of an alcoholic, but it's always a vodka martini. It used to be a gin martini, vodka martini, shaken, not stirred. Right?
Do you know why they changed it to vodka?
I think it was just a sponsorship.
Sponsor, yeah. As soon as I asked the question, I was like,
yeah. James Bond went through just wanted to change things
up. Switch things up.
Yeah. So, and I think, Bollinger, champagne, he went to, I forget what champagne he used to drink, but but the fact that it's, shaken, not stirred, if he's a real alcoholic who just wants to get drunk, why does he care about shaken, not stirred? So suddenly you're realizing, there's all this other stuff, right? So if you're into a particular gin, you're like, well, who was the first person you saw drinking that?
That's exactly what he talks about. He goes, go back to when he's like, think about the drink you have. Go back to when you started drinking it. And he's like, I guarantee you it was a fun environment, social environment. You were with someone you either wanted to impress or who you respected. But all of the circumstances around it were not the alcohol. It was the circumstances that caused you to go, like, I know I like drinking scotch because it makes me feel like I'm a character out of Mad Men. I feel like an adult. I feel like a big boy. And I feel like I got it, and I have a little bit, and it tastes terrible and smoky, and that kind of, I can acquire the taste. And he talks about acquired tastes and all that stuff, and how people speak about an acquired taste with pride, and like the more you can drink and not get drunk, that's like a brag and all that stuff. That's like, it's all just. He's like, it's all just an illusion. He's like, none of it's real.
I mean, so much of what we do, and drinking's one of them, is we think that we have desires, our own desires, but our desires are, ultimately our desires can be thought of as the desire to get the desire of the one we desire. So we desire the desire of those we desire. And that's the most precious material in the earth.
Yes.
And weirdly, you're drinking alcohol and you think you like it, but you're honest and going, actually, most of it tastes disgusting. But you started off maybe because you desired to be part of a group. So you desired the other's desire, and they desired your desire. So you're all drinking something you don't like, but you're doing it not because you like it, but because you like that other people like it. But then that internalizes within you. So even though you're on your own drinking, you're still weirdly drinking for the other. And this is what fantasy is. We've talked about fantasy before, but again, fantasy we think is our own most intimate pleasure. But when you really start to take fantasy apart, you find out that fantasy begins by trying to figure out, how do I give pleasure to the other? So a lot of your fantasy structure is more to do with how you think the other, and the big other, which is everybody and nobody, your family or your parents, how you think that you can be an object of their desire. But then you so take it on that you think it's your desire. So in the same way, you take a drink at night on your own and you're enjoying it, but we're still performing for another.
Oh yeah,
and,
yes. Totally.
So starting to work out, who are we performing for? Who is the audience to our fantasies? Because that is a fantasy, a PH fantasy. Your fantasy of, be it like that. I mean, a scotch, like with big ice cubes, with the glass and the whole vibe.
Well, beautiful glass.
Yeah, beautiful glass. And even if no one's watching you, obviously objectively, and you're just on your own having a drink, it's sometimes worth it going like, what if I was on a stage, who is the audience that's looking at me? And that's a good question to ask.
Yeah, it's like the old not trope, but the litmus test for alcoholism would always be like, well, do you drink alone? And I was always like, well, no, because if I feel alone, that's why I'm drinking. Like, if I drink, I don't feel alone, because in my mind, I'm doing the thing that I do when I'm around a bunch of people having fun. So as I'm drinking it, I don't feel alone. I feel like I'm, and this is just what you do. And then you realize you're alone, but you don't feel it because deep, there's something in there where you're like, oh, I am kind of doing this still because I think I should be, or I think it makes me cool, or I think it's going to help something.
Well, here's a good example of someone I know, changing names, of course. Someone who went to therapy, who I know, and they introduced themselves to the therapist as what's a name where you've got a shortened kind of fun, a kind of
nickname?
Yeah, nickname. Not even a nickname. So there's like let's go for Jonathan, right? So this person
pseudonym, stage name?
No, just Johnny and Jonathan, right? Going to eat that. So introduced himself as Jonathan, and sat down doing the therapy, and then about 2 weeks later, he's talking about himself in the third person. He uses the term Johnny. And the analyst just was like, oh, I noticed you introduced yourself as Jonathan, but in this story you call yourself Johnny. Why is that? And what kind of spilled out of that is a clever move, because it was like, when he drinks, he's Johnny, which is like fun and crazy and this. But when he's doing his everyday life, he's Jonathan. So what ended up coming out is, he's performing a part. He's Johnny. When he's drinking, he's like this crazy cool person who everyone knows is Johnny, and then in his everyday life, he's Jonathan. And once you start to unpick that, you go, oh yeah, who's he playing this part for? He's playing it for his friends and his family and other people, because we all love that part of it. And even if like he's doing something destructive, like getting so drunk and falling down and hurting himself, we all find it such a laugh. That's Johnny. Look at him go. I go like, oh yeah. So there's a performative dimension to this activity that all of his friends are playing into. That he's playing into, his friends are playing into, and it's like, oh yeah, this is not just he likes to drink. There's a whole persona that's connected with it.
Yeah, and a part of himself that he's probably not letting out unless he drinks. Yeah, thinking that the drink is what's letting it out.
That's it.
Fun.
And again, none of that comes out directly in terms of, it's just there's a slight change. Why did you call yourself John? I go, oh yeah, because that's a persona. That's something else that's coming out.
That reminds me of one of my favorite Weezer songs, which is "Summer, Elaine, and Drunk Dory," and I've loved the song since I first heard it, and the name is derived from Rivers Cuomo, who went to a parent-teacher conference, or like a parent-teacher end-of-school year party with the teachers and the kids and all this stuff, and they had like wine and stuff. And one of the one of the teachers, Elaine, was saying that during the summer, my husband calls me Summer Elaine because I'm just more fun. I'm not, doing homework. And then one of her friends said, "Oh yeah, my husband calls me, when I have a little bit, he calls me Drunk Dory. Her name is Dory, so Rivers Cuomo was like Summer, Elaine, and Drunk Dory, and then he put that into his spreadsheet of weirdness and ended up writing a whole song about it, but it's not actually about them at all, because have I talked to you about this weird way that this dude writes songs? It's like he has literally a spreadsheet of different phrases that he thinks of or hears somewhere, and the spreadsheet is organized by the number of syllables in each phrase and the emphasis on what syllable. So, Summer, Elaine, and Drunk Dory, the melody is like Summer, Elaine, so he had to like alter the summer, because summer is the emphasis on the U. So anyway, he basically goes through and he listens to a song that he likes, hears the chord progression, does the chord progression on a recorder, stores that in a database, organizes it by a file name that he takes this original song title that he gets the chord progression from, uses an anagram generator with the name of the song, saves it under that name so that he forgets what song it comes from. And when he wants to write a song, he goes through all these chord progressions, and then he starts coming up with a melody, and then he uses that melody to go into his database of different syllables. And at the end, he has a song that kind of sounds like it makes sense, but he's like, none of it means anything.
Wow.
And he's like, the reason I do that is because back in the day, he would write all these like heartfelt songs and all this, but then he knew what it was about and he got tired of singing it. And he's like, if I don't know what the song is about, it keeps it fresh to perform. So now all of Weezer's songs, the new stuff, is basically just collections of weird phrases that don't really have any kind of...
So that's it, because there's is it Sigur Rós who use Hoplandic? They kind of have like a made up language.
Really?
Yeah, and it sounds so evocative, and it sounds like it means something, but it doesn't.
Yeah,
and it's brilliant, great. And they call it Hoplandic, and it's it actually communicates a huge amount. But just like our first beginnings of language, when you're communicating to a baby, you're making it's a made up language that communicates emotion without necessarily meaning involved.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, very good.
I was in line at Starbucks because you wanted your tall caramel latte, and I was in line, and there was a baby in front of me, and it wasn't looking at me at all, but I just started smiling really big in the event that it looked at me. Yeah. And then I realized that I was just staring at this kid with like a big facial expression, and I was like, oh, I look like a weirdo right now. But anyway.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, you get this all the time. Like if you're at a party and you're having this intense conversation and you're really into it, and then momentarily you both completely forget what you were talking about, what was going on, where you were going. And then you kind of realize, oh yeah, what was important here was not actually the content of what we were saying. It was the saying itself. Like that was what was important. So sometimes it's the meaning kind of gets in the way of just the connection.
Yeah, the being present, sort of, actually, because I mean that I imagine it also.
Because I tune out a lot when you're talking.
Yeah, dude. I would too. Me too. The part of the reason I would drink at a party would be to have that feeling of just like there-ness. Okay, I'm here now. Whereas if it's not there, you're in your head, you're thinking, you're stressed out. So a conversation like that, we're like, oh, okay, yeah, no, all right, I'm a person. I don't know what we're talking about. Cool, and you move on. But then marijuana does that, but not in a good way. Yeah. Unless you see cats on marijuana, which was very fun.
Yeah, you've seen cats twice now?
Yeah.
Wow.
Magical Mr. Mistopheles.
What was that like?
The second time was a riot, dude. It was a rented out theater, and it was me and Grace, and then Sarah Whittle, the whole like Smosh gang. Steve Zaragoza was there. Literally whole theater of just us, and then all the servers. Like it was one of those theaters that you can order drinks and food. I've actually never seen a theater like this. Like the cup holders had a cooling thing. You could click and then like it reclined. It had a USB outlet so you could charge your phone during the movie. Like I've never seen anything like it.
My goodness.
And the waiters were just like, this is insane, because they didn't know that, like, and they were taking photos before we went in of Cats 6:30 sold out, which makes no sense at this point. And it's only sold out because Sarah's husband came in. It was Claudio. You met Claudio.
Oh, yeah,
poker.
He's great. He's great.
He was like, I want to buy all of the tickets for and they were like, what? And they're like, yes, I want to buy the entire theater's worth of tickets to see Cats. And he's very Italian. That's a horrible accent. But it was very, very fun. So
I was going to guess New Yorker from that accent.
Yeah, totally.
So he bought all the tickets up.
Yeah, and
the
they
whole
gave him a
thing?
discounted rate, so it ended up being like $5 a person. We're like, yeah, we're gonna go do for $5 a person.
Very good.
Have you seen Knives Out?
No, I haven't actually,
Dude,
but I've heard it's good.
you gotta.
Yeah.
You gotta. If I was
Okay.
going to be in town this weekend, I'd say we should go see Knives Out. It's so good. So anyway, do you have any final takeaway type stuff?
I feel like we're kind of there's
still-
loads of stuff that we can't get into, but yeah.
I want
that
to
was
talk about
interesting.
hypnosis more too
Yeah.
at some point.
Yeah, because the main takeaway, because that was just kind of a fun conversation about addiction, but I think
As they all are.
yeah, but the idea that that even our addictions, our deepest desires, actually are connected to other people's desires, the desire of others, and partly coming to see how our even most intimate desire of, I just drink this type of vodka or this type of scotch, and that's my desire, that's what I love. When you start to unpick it, you start to realize that it's because of maybe you saw your dad drink that, or your friends, or you've got some TV show, or there's a whole pile of other people's desires involved in what you're doing. And kind of just beginning to see that can be enough to weaken the link to what you're doing.
That's my final thought is to echo what you're saying. In doing this process, I've realized that what gives me the most anxiety is definitely not drinking. Is everyone else going to be okay with me not drinking? Because I'm definitely in the camp of like people, like you were saying last week, like you should see, like, let's have a gin and tonic, like let's have fun, whatever. And so the big question mark is, am I going to be okay with other people being okay or not being okay with me drinking, or being confused or having to explain? It's always still related to the other person. Whereas me personally, I'm like, I don't care. It's fine. I could actually not do it. But then, especially now that it's like actually I'm seeing the stress start to pop up, which is really interesting, and like the darker stuff start to pop up, and I'm like, well, if that's happening and it wasn't happening before, something is a good. Plus, just dude, the amount of dreams I've had, started to have actual, I think, like unconsciously driven dreams, not just like I took too much melatonin or ate something weird, but like actual stuff. I'm like, oh, there's a whole world of things that are there that I think have just been dormant because I've been I've been partying.
Yeah, so. and that's what you're talking about. Like, even when people give up the concern of what people are going to think, that's how we're structured as human beings. We desire, others desire, and if we stop drinking, there's sometimes a tension of just without your friends don't care, but of like, is that going to be an issue? You're going to, and that's the thing about when we're ships cast to sea, just caught in other people's desires, we kind of move from one thing to the other. The trick is, how can we be so embrace our own desire that we're able to do what we want to do. We can kind of basically embrace our own desires. That's what Nietzsche meant when he talked about saying yes to your fate. He kind of goes like, somehow you subjectivize your desires, you embrace your desires, and you're less concerned about what other people think. And partly that can make you an asshole, because you're less likely to give into peer pressure. So at parties, you can be the one who just says no. But actually, that's more attractive. If you're at a party or you're a social
more respectable,
gathering, more respectable, and you're your own person, it's actually it's a very appealing characteristic.
Yeah.
So
that's in the book he talks about. He's like, have you ever seen, as someone who drinks, have you ever seen someone who doesn't and actually looked down on them? He's like, I bet, he's like, if you look at someone who just chooses not to drink, there's a party that's like not jealous but respects it. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a better way to be. But then to get there, when it's you yourself, you're thinking the whole time like, no one's gonna respect this, is gonna be so embarrassing, and you don't realize that everyone's just like, it's almost like everyone's at the party waiting for someone to be like, we don't have to do this. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, it's impressive. I have a friend who he's so self-confident and so embraces his own desire, and he can go to a party. And one of the things we do at parties is we hold on to drinks. So partly a drink is not to drink it, but to have something that we're holding on to, kind of the mother's breast or whatever, to protect us. And he can stand without a drink hands in his pockets, in the center of a party, completely confident, no sense of insecurity at all. And it's a very appealing quality. It's like, oh my goodness, that person just doesn't care. They don't need a cigarette in their hand. They don't need to hold a glass. They don't need to look at their phone. You know, all these things that we do.
The phone's a massive
that's a
one.
different,
yeah.
So he could just lean against the wall and just kind of, and not even feel the need to talk to anybody, just look around. But of course,
and you think he genuinely feels that way?
Yeah, I know him. He's an asshole. He's lovely. He's great. He's a really good person. Just does not give a fuck.
Yeah.
And that makes you, you know, and I watch it, and I watch how people then come up to him, because it's going like, oh wow, there's a person who just is his own guy.
It's a whole world when you start just doing the thing that you want to do and not letting which goes back before we hit record on this, talking about uploading videos to my YouTube channel and being like, is it, you know, okay, and is it people not liking it and all that stuff. But he was like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I partially do, but then the other part is like, no, I want to upload them. So, but let us know if you haven't enjoyed this or you don't.
Please do. Yeah.
And if you're just still listening, that's great too. Enjoy. But yeah, thanks. And Pete was so flattered by all the nice things you guys said about
it was lovely.
His attractiveness, and he's just.
That's
why you have a new sweater.
I've got a feeling people thought I was like 60 years old or something. What do you think?
I don't know.
I
don't know.
Yeah. I'd love to know what people. It'd be funny to see what people would draw you as, who have never actually seen your face, just heard your voice. Like, I wonder what.
I have a blindness sometimes to the attractiveness of dudes mostly, but sometimes just other people in general. And I think it was like a couple months ago, somebody was talking about you and me, and they're like, yeah, you guys are like both like attractive dudes, and I was like, okay.
That's nice.
Thank you.
To know.
Yeah, that's the most important thing anyway.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.